TikTok dance celebrity. It has become, and I'm going to put this in the biggest quotation marks ever, AJ, easy to be a celebrity. It has become easy. Anyone can do it, right? I can pick up my phone and figure out some kind of thing that nobody's ever done before, or something funny, or whatever the case, and I can become an influencer. It is not so easy. And there are now studies and books about virality and how to become a viral influencer.
Because I love social media, but at the same time I hate social media. If I'm being honest, I can be much more productive, because sometimes during the day I can see that I'm supposed to maybe upload a video or just create the content, and then I see that I spend like 2 hours just creating the video, and then I have to edit the video, and then sometimes it's like it's a lot, you know.
Some videos don't get the right amount of like likes, but then it's the same video and then these get a good amount. You don't know what you're doing wrong. You don't know what you need. You don't know if the video is the problem. You don't know if it's the title that's the problem, if it's the quality that's the problem, it's the problem. You don't know what it is. You kind of like have to figure out while you're posting. You have to post a bunch and you have to see the views from there. You kind of have to study your own views.
Does this stress you out?
Oh yeah.
Want to like enjoy the moment and really enjoy what I'm doing, travel or something, and not just be in my phone all the time. But I feel like it's so hard if you're like an influencer, or if you work with like social media or even marketing for like another job, you're always in your phone, and sometimes it's so hard to like leave your phone and like do something else, because I feel like everything is in my phone. Like social media, you're scrolling and you're editing the video, you're recording it, you're looking for like trending audios, you're looking for like captions and all of that. You're always on your phone.
Are you always comparing yourself to people who have it better than you on social media? So there's so much there, but also just in how the social media platforms are built. Like they capitalize on human behavior to keep you coming back to the app.
When the internet started, and if you take that as a technological starting point, the World Wide Web and then blogging and stuff like that, it was a very different thing from what we have now. So in the beginning, it was more or less experimental. People actually were trying to be part of the communication there, and there was this talk about, Web 2.0, where before you had big companies going to the internet and only they had the resources to actually do that, and you had a few citizens that were doing things, and it was all very experimental and very small.
So one of the reasons that social media is so compelling is because these are prompts that are coming from people that are near to you in social space. And that makes it more compelling to pay attention to that information and to respond to it, which is one of the reasons social media is so dangerous.
However, what I've been seeing on my TikTok comments is that a lot of my comments are like, I haven't seen you in forever. Like, I don't see you on my For You page. So even my followers are telling me that the way that I'm being pushed, like to promote my videos, they're not being pushed on like the For You page as they used to even to people that follow me. So I'm pretty sure it's just the way the app works versus like my actual content or my actual followers that really enjoy my content.
I said when we get to the point where social media is not a bunch of real humans, but is maybe a few real humans and a lot of bots, when this becomes more common, you're going to be in a situation where if you're using social media to try to understand what's true and what's not true and what normal behavior is, someone may be telling you what normal behavior is, even when it's not really normal behavior. And they can encourage you to do all sorts of things like, storm the Capitol and stop an election.
Whereas there's all kinds of talented musicians and artists and who never crack, 1,000 views. So I don't know what that secret sauce is. If I did, I'd be an influencer too. But I think people want popularity, people want fame, people want notoriety, people want to feel special.
The information that people are being exposed to is oftentimes negative information that will have a negative impact on their mental health and well-being, and will just encourage them to continue to check. And so you've heard of this term fear of missing out, right?
FOMO, yeah.
That word fear is an important component of FOMO. You know, you're afraid that you're going to miss something, and that negative emotion, that fear, is a very strong motivator.
We try to create a bit more of a participatory lean-in experience, one where you're going to discover a reel and then send it to a friend and then talk about it with another friend. And but it's still a huge part of what we do because there's a huge amount of demand. And at the end of the day, we're a business. We have to figure out a way to meet demand as demand moves around and shifts.
If you think about Google, Facebook, and so on, their big breakthrough, that's 15 years ago maybe. It's not that they have been existing or have been in that market for a long, long time.
And we focus on creators because we believe power is going to continue to shift from institutions to individuals across industries. We also see that in the data. Creators drive, on average, more engagement than a publisher does. People want to see the world through the eyes of another individual that they relate to or that they look up to, more than they want to consume content from a publisher that they feel is hyper-processed and produced and designed for them.
So individuals communicating and getting their message out and being influential, that has been existing, I think, forever in a way, and is a part of human society, that you have people that are kind of communicative leaders in societies.
And I see that a lot in influencer culture, right? Where, say, an influencer posts a video and people are in the comments and they're like, well, now talk about this thing, or you need to talk about this. We want to see this type of video from you. We want you to speak on this subject. And so, you know, in order to keep your base happy, you kind of have to you are a commodity to them, and you have to treat yourself like that.
I don't want to be more perfect. I don't want to be the pretty girl with the long hair who just smiles and is like stupid. That's not me, you know? So I shaved my head, yo me rapé la cabeza, and I was like, I don't care. And I was a little bit like in a revolution with this thing. I was like, no me importa. And I still having some nice photo shoots, like much more alternative stuff and more artistic stuff. And I felt much more connected with that. So sometimes people see me, they're like, hey, you have changed a lot. This is not just about what you see. There are many more things behind that.
Right? If you were a social media influencer, to some extent you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position. Stigma really is akin to judgment. So if you're putting content out there that receives a negative reaction, it's only human for you to feel judged. That's a piece of your creative work that you have put out into the world that is being judged, right? If we internalize that judgment, then we experience a sense of shame as a result.
I'm sure you don't get that many hate comments and stuff because you're doing something solely about research and helping. Oh, I'm wrong. See,
no,
so yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, I think it's related to the content that I talk about, which oftentimes is research related to like gender prejudice, gender stereotypes, or bias in general, and that gets met with a lot of pushback. People denying that certain types of prejudice exist. I get discredited very easily because of how I look. People assume that I'm really young and not that I have a PhD in a topic. And so they'll call me an undergrad. They'll say, this girl took a psychology class and she thinks that she knows what she's talking about. And I'm like, actually, I taught a psychology class. Like, I'm currently teaching. So, you know, I think everyone, once your platform gets big enough or once your video gets pushed to enough people, you are just going to get negative comments because that's how the algorithms work, right? Like it.
Yeah. So I think with the dark participation, the motivation here is very different. So there are people out there that are really purely evil. I mean, they just want to be bad, you know, they have fun because they can kind of verbally torture people to spread hate because they get fun out of that. But I think that's a small minority. So these people that are really inherently kind of motivated to do bad things, that's problematic because usually people want to have a personal, you know, their personal perception is, I want to do good, I want to be a good person, at least in my worldview. I want to be within my system of beliefs, I want to be the good guy. even if that can mean you're the bad guy for other people, but at least in your belief system, you do the right thing.
So sometimes like, oh my gosh, she's so superficial. Like, oh my God, she only cares about like clothes and whatever. I don't know. Like, should I change the comment? Should I delete the video? Sometimes it's very hard when people like comment that, because you know you're not like that, but you start thinking like, guess.
Questioning for sure, yeah.
Questioning yourself, yeah.
It's very important to actually realize that it's not like a normal interaction that you have in real life. You know, you're not meeting as a person on the street, and then the people start, you know, that person starts yelling at you or says, you know, I hate your face, and therefore I'm nasty and I throw stuff at you. That's usually not happening in the streets, right? But on the internet, it's very different. The interaction is very different because people do not follow the same rules that they do in real life. So a lot of the verbal abuse and hate that you get is not the same that you would get in a standard real life situation, in a normal, you know, face-to-face interaction. And I think it's also important, you know, because very often if you think about communication and, you know, interactions, we take the face-to-face situation and transfer that to all the other types of communication that we have. And I think intellectually, I think it helps to realize, okay, probably these people do not hate me personally, but what I represent on the internet, and actually they're not following the same rules that they would follow in a real life interaction.
I can imagine that there's probably been people who've been influencers who've experienced that sense of judgment. It's deeply impacted their view of themselves, their view of their ability to continue on with this work, who've maybe dropped out of that as a career path. And then also just the mental health implications of that. A lot of times people, I'm using the example of mental illness just because that's my area of expertise. A lot of times people with mental illness say that the stigma is worse than the symptoms of the mental illness themselves.
But that's an intellectual level. On an emotional level, I think it's very difficult, because then the same rules apply that we also, you know, apply in a face-to-face interaction. You feel insulted, you feel ridiculed, and so on. It's not that you are, as a person, the object of hate, but what you represent in that type of communication on the internet. And for that, I think it's kind of important to kind of distance yourself from the professional role or the image that you have on the internet, because there are two different things. But then if you bring in a lot of your own personality, and I see that with a lot of influencers, then it becomes personal, because part of their personality is represented, you know, and then the insult is basically directed at you because it's part of your personality that's insulted.
I would imagine that you could develop some pretty significant psychological distress with repeated judgment from the community of people that you're actually trying to serve with your content.
For that, it's very important to actually, if you're doing that on a professional basis, I think also to get professional help and also prepare yourself for that.
I mean, I think going back to it, finding others who are dealing with the same types of issues that you are. But, you know, as you heard, it doesn't necessarily have to be an influencer. You know, maybe you can find somebody else who's in a career field that experiences a significant amount of pressure. Academia, being a author, right? I mean, that's not as frequent of content that they're putting out, but it is content that they're putting out into the world that will be critiqued. So finding others who have found ways to deal with those types of pressures and that criticism.
You're an influencer and you're successful enough, there will be people out there doing that. So there's no way it's not happening. It's not that everybody, you know, will love you. Even if you're a super well liked, you know, there's still people that will hate you just because others like you.
They do have the strength to read it and not care, while other people read it, try not to care, but it like really sinks into them. Like,
just open yourself.
Yeah, I started like that, and it still is kind of like that, but I'm like it's getting easier for me to just avoid it or just delete it. Now I switched it up. Now if I ever get like any negative feedback, I learned that that's still engagement for your videos. So I like to make fun of it now. Like, let's say I get a comment that says something really mean. Usually I'm so anxious that it's there and I just delete it so nobody else can see it. Now, and it really does help. I think everybody should try this. It really does help to like make fun of it and like comment on the person and make fun of them and make them more mad, because the more they comment, That's how the algorithm works for like TikTok or Instagram. The higher the engagement the video gets, more people comment, more engagements happen from somebody that really doesn't like you.
There needs to be more information available to people about the pros and cons of being an influencer, right? So that you can make the decision about whether you want to put your material out there. Now, that being said, we can't always predict what the reaction is going to be or how we're going to respond to negative commentary, especially when it can be so overwhelming and constant.
If somebody follows that route, you must be prepared for that. You must protect your personal life, I guess, and your private life. And also, I know that a lot of people that are in the public are actually having, for example, a professional structure in the background. So social support, but also maybe even a lawyer and somebody who knows what to do if the insult becomes really problematic or somebody's threatening you.
There's lots of cognitive behavioral type of programs online, like apps, for example, that help you to think through negative thought patterns. Because really, it's not so much what the person is saying about you, but what you're saying to yourself as a result of that, right? You don't have to agree with them. So using strategies to kind of refute those negative comments. There's a whole area of research called positive psychology, which focuses on things like mindfulness, like positive affirmations. So focusing on, I know it might only be 20% or 25% of the responses you received on your content, but 25% of positive comments can do a whole lot for you in helping you to ignore or at least thwart the negative effects of the negative commentary that you've received.
I focus on what is working versus what's not working. If it's not working, it's not working. Like, only stress over something that you can control. If I can't control the views, I can only control what I post. I'm just keep on posting, just in a different platform. I'm gonna keep on posting, but on a platform that has it higher. So now that like the stress is over something that I cannot control, I can't really control the algorithm, I can kind of do my best, do the rules, like all the rules that they're telling us to do, I can do everything, and if the views don't go up, my stress is gonna get higher. So I try to focus on what I can control, and that is hopping from different platforms and still having a certain amount of views for those.
But I'm very optimistic, and I have every single day I try to be very positive and have a good attitude. Even if I'm not feeling good, I just try to go, maybe one day I can be more slow, I can be less productive, but I just try to keep it up. I try to don't stop it, at least do one thing every single day. Going to the gym, I wasn't doing yoga, I wasn't anything like that, and I was accumulating all this stress, and then I started looking to those results of the stress, dolor de espalda, blah blah blah. That's why I always say it's better to prioritize
yourself.
I assign a friend of mine to go into my account and help me moderate comments that come in, and they just also like delete or block anyone that's being rude to me so that I don't have to see it myself. So I just disconnect from it, right? Like, it's not real.
I don't want to have these people in my environment because it's my environment, not theirs. Although people perceive it very often like that and then complain when they're blocked and say, oh, censorship, you're taking away my rights to speak and things like that. Nobody does that, actually. They could open their own channel and nobody prevents them from communicating. But it's if you have a private environment, kind of an environment that you are basically setting up as a communicator, you are setting the rules. And then there's also people that say, okay, I cope with that, I try to endure it, and I try to communicate with these people, or kind of hopefully my community will take care of that. But it really depends on the individual level, I think. I think the way how you handle that is up to you, and not up to the hate guy that actually insults you and then complains when you block him.
May view influencers as self-indulgent, right? Like you're putting your content up there because you have big head, essentially, right? That you think highly of yourself, so highly in fact that other people would want to hear from you. That's one thing, that's why I think that people find it easy to hate on content creators. You're going to face adversity in your career.
Influencers are about selling something, selling an idea, selling a product. You have to first grab someone's attention and hold on to it. And then once you have their attention, you can then do something with it. Try to sell them a product, try to sell them an idea. If you're constantly kind of being an influencer, chasing that, that's why people do crazy things, right? Because in television, we called it jumping the shark. The problem is you can only do so many crazy things.
You are very limited in what you can do because they want you to do specific things. And even if you're an influencer on YouTube, for example, what are you doing there? Yeah, you're producing YouTube videos, right? Because that's what the platform offers.
When you put yourself in the public eye, you are committing to be a public figure who is no longer protected by privacy because you have made the decision. And people will say this. People will say, well, he's famous, she's famous. It's okay if we get in the comment section and they're rude. It's okay if we do that because this is a public figure.
One thing influencers probably need to be doing is constantly revisiting why it is they do what they do.